Hi y'all, my name is Nick, and in this video I'm going to talk about graphic design and how it relates to board game. I am an assistant professor of graphic design in the Department of Visual Arts and Media here at the University of Mount Union. So this is the disembodied voice that is currently talking to you. And as an avid board game player myself, I'm interested and excited to talk about design and how we can implement it in board games today. So, if I were to ask you, what is the hardest part about playing a new board game? The answer for many of you and for folks that you might ask is very often learning to play, especially with a large board game or a game with a lot of complex mechanics. It's stressful to try and remember all those rules and to understand the state of the game. As an example, this is a photograph of the board game Scythe mid-game, and as you can see, there's a lot of different symbols, there's a lot of pieces, there's a lot of representation on the board that people have to interpret in order to understand the game. What we call this in design is cognitive load. And learning a new game or interpreting a game's current state contributes to that. And what that is the friction of your brain trying to parse and process information. So, one thing we can do in graphic design, or as I like to call it, visual communication design, is reduce that because graphic design is functional. It's not just art. It's something that can reduce cognitive load. It can make games more enjoyable to play and to learn. And of course, it can increase their aesthetic appeal. So today in this first video, I want to chat a little bit about just a few design principles that may help you communicate more clearly, both with your game rules as well as your prototypes and the components of the game. And then in a separate video, I'm going to introduce Figma, which is a free prototyping tool that you can use to design your game components, or even to do some digital play testing. So, how does design communicate? One way we can find that out is we can look at some scans of rule sets or components from board games, and we can ask ourselves, how do these designs organize information for the players? So I'm just going to kind of throw these on the screen and give you a few seconds with each one of them to think about what are some of the features or design choices on these that the designers of the rule sets are using to help people understand the information that is presented. After we take a look at them, we will start to break them down with just some of the principles of graphic design that you will be able to then implement in your own rule sets. So, what are some tools for organizing information? The first one we can talk about is iconography, which is super effective because it both creates visual appeal and it also helps our players digest information much more quickly because we're establishing a new, very concise visual language for them. So here you can see the introduction of the icon for fear in this rule set, and they both define it and introduce it in the text here so that everywhere else we see it, we know that that is what that symbol is referring to. This game makes great use of iconography throughout. They have an entire page in the rule set that's devoted to explaining what those icons mean to the player. And then every time thereafter, they can use those icons and not take up a ton of space on the card or the page by including text. These are also differentiated enough that we can quickly recognize the difference much more quickly than we can read the words. Again, just some more examples of icons. As I flip back through these, you can see where they both create visual interest as well as provide some variance so it's not just a big block of words everywhere. But that's not to say that words aren't important. Obviously, you need to use text to explain your rules to the player, and typography is language visualized, and so we need typography. So the other things in here are things that we can apply to the type itself to help structure our information. And the first one here is size. So you'll see a wide variance in sizes of text here, and they often communicate the different levels of information. So this is the largest text on the page. That's actually the title of the page. And then the second largest information denotes headers. And then the final size of text is the regular paragraph text that we read to understand what's under the header. This is from another game, and this will show not just the structure of the instructions and the sections, but we also have it on the card itself. So you'll notice that the title of Burrowing Owl is significantly larger than the descriptive text on cards, which is, again, still larger than the flavor text that you see at the bottom. But we have more than just size, of course. We have other tools that we can use. Another one here is weight. So heavier weights make information more important. So we talked about the size differences here, but then this text here is all the same size, but they use the bold weight to denote the more important information and then the definition of that information. Again, here they have it in the rules where it's kind of a shorter description of that rule in bold. And then the rest of that paragraph explains more about how this works. Next, we have space, which is a really important one because it's not necessarily a treatment that we're applying to the type, but it allows us to group information together. The use of space is actually what we're doing when we add a paragraph break. We know that we separate paragraphs to separate ideas, but really what helps us group those is because we're adding more space between this paragraph and this paragraph than the space we have between sentences. So that is what groups the information together. But it's not just between paragraphs, it's also between sections. So you'll notice there is a significant gap here between the victory and defeat section and the fear and terror section. And then we also create space around the win conditions, which makes this a call out. Here we have space breaking out these sidebars from the main instruction text. And next we have color. People like to add color, of course, because it creates visual appeal, but it also calls a lot of attention. So here we've used color to call a lot of attention to the title of the page, as well as to create this call out. Again, color here helps differentiate this information, not just because of the shape of the icons, but because of the colors. Here, red means everybody else, while green means it applies to you. And then yellow is always money. Okay, so those are just a few tools. We're going to explore those more in the next video in an exercise. Of course, there's so much more to learn in graphic design. So if you find this interesting, what we've gone over today, or you want to learn more about it, we'd love to see you in the graphic design program over in the arts major. The graphic design one actually counts for an A credit when it's taken with visual analysis. And so if you're interested or you want to learn more about it, or you just want some extra eyes on your board game or your pieces, please feel free to reach out. I'd love to see what you're making.